Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're exploring a psychological phenomenon that affects millions of people, but not many talk about it openly. We're discussing the psychology of people who are too aware, people who experience excessive self-consciousness, overthinking, and what psychologists call hyper-reflectivity. If you've ever felt like you're constantly observing yourself from the outside, analyzing every social interaction, or feeling trapped in your own mind, this video is for you. Let's start by defining what we mean by being too aware. There's a difference between healthy self-awareness and what we might call pathological self-awareness. Healthy self-awareness is when you have an accurate understanding of your strengths, weaknesses, emotions, and how you come across to others. This is actually a sign of psychological maturity and emotional intelligence. It helps you make good decisions, maintain healthy relationships, and grow as a person. But excessive self-awareness is different. It's when you're constantly monitoring yourself from an outside perspective. You're watching yourself have conversations, analyzing every word you said, every facial expression you made, every gesture you performed. You're thinking about what others are thinking about you. You're hyper-aware of your body, your appearance, your mannerisms. It becomes exhausting because there's essentially a running commentary in your mind that never shuts off. Psychologists call this state depersonalization or derealization when it's severe, but more commonly, we just call it overthinking or being in your head too much. And here's the fascinating part. Being too aware is often linked to intelligence, creativity, and sensitivity. Many highly intelligent people struggle with this because their minds are capable of processing multiple layers of information simultaneously. Let's talk about what causes excessive self-awareness. The first major cause is anxiety. When we feel anxious, our brain activates a protective mechanism. It starts monitoring our environment and ourselves very closely, looking for threats. It's trying to keep you safe. But sometimes this system gets stuck in the on position. You start seeing yourself as a potential threat. You become hyper-aware of how others perceive you because you're worried about negative judgment. This creates a vicious cycle. The more anxious you feel about how you're perceived, the more you monitor yourself and the more self-conscious you become. Second cause is perfectionism. If you grew up in an environment where mistakes were heavily criticized or where love felt conditional on achievement, you might have developed perfectionist tendencies. Perfectionists tend to be extremely self-aware because they're constantly evaluating their performance against an impossible standard. They're asking themselves, am I doing this right? How am I coming across? Is this perfect? This hypervigilance about their own performance extends to social situations too. Trauma is another significant cause. If you've experienced social rejection, bullying, or any form of relational trauma, your brain might have learned to be hyper-aware of social cues and other people's reactions. This is actually an adaptive response to past pain, but it can become maladaptive when it persists even in safe situations. Another cause is temperament. Some people are born with what psychologists call high sensitivity. They process sensory information more deeply, they feel things more intensely, and they're naturally more introspective. These people tend toward being more self-aware from childhood. It's not necessarily a problem until it becomes excessive. Social media and modern technology have also amplified this issue. When you're constantly comparing yourself to curated versions of other people's lives, when you're getting instant feedback in the form of likes and comments, when you're aware that everything you post is being judged, it creates an environment that feeds excessive self-awareness. You start viewing yourself as a brand or a product to be evaluated. Now let's talk about what excessive self-awareness actually does to your life. The most obvious effect is that it reduces your presence and enjoyment. If you're constantly monitoring yourself during a conversation, you're not fully present in that conversation. You're not really listening because you're thinking about what you just said or what you're about to say. This actually makes you worse at social interactions, not better. Ironically, trying so hard to be socially appropriate makes you less socially capable. This hyper-awareness also increases anxiety and depression. When you're constantly judging yourself and imagining negative judgments from others, you're reinforcing negative self-beliefs. You're feeding the cycle of anxiety. Studies show that people with high levels of self-focused attention experience higher rates of depression and anxiety disorders. Excessive self-awareness also impairs your creativity and risk-taking. Creativity requires a certain level of unself-consciousness. You have to be willing to look silly, to fail, to experiment. But when you're too aware, you're paralyzed by fear of judgment. You won't try new things. You won't speak up with ideas. You won't take the risks that often lead to growth and success. It also affects your sleep. When you're hyper-aware, your mind is constantly active. You're replaying conversations, analyzing interactions, worrying about how you were perceived. This mental activity makes it hard to shut down at night. Many people who are excessively self-aware struggle with insomnia because their minds won't stop working. Additionally, excessive self-awareness can create dissociation from your body and emotions. You're so focused on observing yourself that you lose touch with what you actually feel. You might not notice that you're hungry or tired. You might not feel genuine emotions because you're too busy analyzing them. This disconnection from your body can actually increase anxiety because your body can't communicate its needs to you properly. Let me also talk about the social effects. People who are excessively self-aware often come across as nervous, stiff, or inauthentic, which is the opposite of what they're trying to achieve. By trying so hard to be perfect and appropriate, they paradoxically become less likable. People generally connect with authenticity and ease, not perfectionism and calculation. So the very strategy that people use to manage their excessive self-awareness often backfires. Now, here's something really important to understand. There are actually some benefits to being self-aware, even when it's excessive. These people tend to be more empathetic because they're so attuned to how others might feel. They're often more creative in certain ways because they can see situations from multiple perspectives.